And sometimes people like angry men in prison who are very skeptical, actually all angry men that I've worked with, when you start mentioning compassion in the first session, they literally roll their eyes at you, and say, oh, compassion. We're going to do compassion. Isn't that nice? They're like, well, it's a little different than that, right? So I think if anytime we can introduce compassion in a way that doesn't feel soft and fluffy, but is really, demonstrates what it's about in an efficient way, which is really about how we relate to struggling. How do we relate to suffer? What do we do when pain and discomfort or, self-loathing or whatever it is that shows up? And so, for this practice, what I'd like you to do is just take a moment, and it's helpful. You can close your eyes or keep them open. This isn't really a meditation so much. It's just kind of a reflection. I'd like you to bring to mind a situation in which you've struggled recently. Maybe this was a time that you were feeling a threat emotion like anger or fear, anxiety. Maybe it was a situation in which you were just struggling, having a hard time. Maybe you responded in a way in which you felt self-critical. Maybe a situation you felt a little bit ashamed of how you showed up in that situation, or what you did or didn't do, or been a little self-critical of. Would you say you've been able to bring a situation like that to mind? Yeah, thank you. So, with that situation in mind, I'd like you to ask yourself a question. Given what you know about you, what it was like growing up, what you learned, what you didn't learn, all the things that happened to you as your life played out, the normal things, the things that stood out, perhaps some traumatic things, so all the things that happened. Given everything you know about you, everything you know about everything else, does it make sense that you would struggle with that situation that you brought to mind? Does it make sense that you would struggle with exactly this?
Sure thing.
Yeah. And so here's the thing with that question. The answer, as you might suspect, is always yes. It's always yes, because our struggles occur within context in which they make sense. There's a reason that I struggle with things that you don't struggle with, and that you perhaps struggle with things that I don't struggle with, right? Because we all have these histories and all this stuff. So, the second question is, given that it makes complete sense that you would struggle with this situation, what would be helpful? Sometimes when people hear the question, what would be helpful, they think, what would be helpful in fixing the situation? What would help to make this right? But if you pay much attention, you'll note that a lot of the things that really we struggle with a lot, there's no easy answer. And often there's nothing we can do in an immediate sense to fix it or change it or make it right. So often, the answer to the question, given that it makes complete sense that I would be struggling with this, the answer to the question, what would be helpful, is more to the tune of, what would help me be the best version of me that I can be while I endure, while I struggle with this difficult situation? What would help me be as comfortable as possible while I endure this sort of unavoidable difficulty?
Well, what immediately comes to mind is what would be helpful is a hand on my back.